No Brendan Gallagher, no Carey Price. Huge problems in Montreal as they drop probably, arguably, their worst game of the year. And now find themselves on the back end of a 3-game losing streak. It hasn't been going well for the Canadiens, but you know what? We're doing well. And so welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to another beautiful episode of Shooting the Shit. So, as always, you guys know who I am by now, I hope. I'm Landsman, I'm the host, joined by, as usual, on my other side, my trusted compadre, my partner in crime in this mission. What's going on? We have Z. Z, what's happening?
Hey, Davey. Happy Sunday, buddy. How are you?
I'd say I'm okay. It's a beautiful weekend, good weather. I think the Habs are a little under the weather, per se.
Yeah, and I think I'm doing better than I did last night when I basically threw the remote, shut the TV off, and flipped the channel to something else. I couldn't watch that game anymore.
Yeah, you know what? I wish I had that luxury, but unfortunately I had to cover it for Habs Eyes on the Prize.
Right.
So I had to stay through the entire 60 minutes. I wanted to throw the remote. I wanted to turn it off, but I couldn't. So if you guys missed it, last night, Saturday, the Montreal Canadiens played host to the Winnipeg Jets for the second time in 72 hours. And, there was one upside. They didn't get scored on in the first minute, which has been a problem all week.
I know, isn't that sad? It's funny, when they played the Leafs, I thought, they kind of got the Leafs kind of dominated the first. Habs played really well in the second, and then Leafs took over the third, and the Habs just didn't have enough in the tank to try to come back and win that game. But, I thought they rolled over. They played a decent game against Winnipeg on Thursday. It wasn't lights out. I thought they had a chance to win that game. They could have won that game. They didn't. But I just had a bad feeling last night. Like, this team's running out of gas. Like, no Armia. We talked about Gallagher and Price, but also no Armia, no Chiarot. Stahl's still being worked into the lineup and has not, he just hasn't looked good. I mean, we'll touch on that. Suzuki looks like he's struggling with the workload and maybe a little bit of a sophomore jinx. Kotkaniemi was at the wing playing out of position than he played all year, although I thought he played pretty well. Like, there's so many things we're going to talk about right now, but just to me, the Habs seem out of sorts. And I think that, I want to start with, and I want to know what you think, Davey, is I think Ducharme, who's, he kind of came in and kind of stabilized the ship. He didn't make any radical changes. I mean, the power play was clicking after he kind of came on board with Burrows making a few changes. And I think, the Habs kind of stabilized. He went back to the Tatar, Gallagher, Dano line like we spoke about. And it seemed like things stabilized. And then these injuries hit and he hasn't been able to adapt, and that's been one of my issues is he hasn't really made any changes strategy-wise from the Julien system. And I just think he kind of looked like he looked lost these last few games, and it kind of translated down to the team. I'm not impressed so far. Like, listen, I know it's been a few games, and this is a weird year where there's no practices and compressed schedule. So I don't want to, throw the guy right under the bus right away. But, I was hoping for more changes, and I'm just not seeing it. And I don't know what you think, starting right at the top of Ducharme.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the lack of consistency is just spread throughout the entire lineup. If you have people that sometimes ride highs and then just get stopped cold, it's like it's not even a transition of having some rough couple games. It's more like, what the hell? Like, where are you? I could say one of the big questions that I've been wondering a lot this year is Jonathan who? Like, Jonathan Drouin, for example, is one of those players that was brought into Montreal to provide an offensive threat, or a playmaker. But he has done neither lately. He's been non-existent, pretty much a ghost on the ice. He hasn't scored in 20 games, and he's gone one in his last 31. He's gone 20 games without a goal, and he's gotten one goal in his last 31 games. That's pretty alarming. He's only got 2 goals this year. I mean, much like Taylor Hall, making a little less money. But, we're talking about Montreal here, which is a team that right now, like you said, the injuries are starting to add up. And it's taking a toll on the team. The chemistry just feels a little bit off sync. You bring in some leadership in Stahl, and then you lose Gallagher for, the foreseeable future. you put that top line together that was working really well as of late. We talked about it when Ducharme said, "Hey, Tatar, Gallagher, Deneau, put you guys together. It's working. Let's keep it going." And then a fucking slap shot takes Galley out.
Yeah, it was a wrister from Romanov, but that's just, man, you know what I was thinking about Gallagher? You should go off on a tangent. Like, do they create like inside sleeve glove? Like, I've never played ice hockey, at a high level, just, shitty. But they got to have some sort of like Kevlar. I don't know, man. This guy needs layers on his hands, not just one glove. He needs to fucking wrap his glove with his hands with like foil and then Kevlar. I mean, Jesus, he's a warrior and he stands in front of the net, and that's going to happen. But it's a massive loss for the Habs. Dare I say, because of the Jesus Price sort of mentality that a lot of fans still have, but he's the bigger loss than Price, because Allen, despite I think the fact that he probably had a couple goals he wanted back over the last 3 games, Allen is a good serviceable goalie. But the drop off from Gallagher to having, Kotkaniemi slot in there, but then Evans has to come in the lineup for Kotkaniemi, or moving Byron in there, but then, you got to move, and play, someone else out of position, or you bring in Frolik. It's a big drop off, especially for what Gallagher brings in terms of effort and that ability not to quit on a play or a goal. The Habs, they lack those type of players, and it's not because of lack of effort. In some cases, some of them have effort. They're just not as talented, right? Lehkonen is an all-out player. Byron is an all-out player. They're just not as good as Gallagher. It's just a reality,
You take Gallagher and his heart and soul and the never quit attitude. It's hard to replace that, because there's a lot of players in the Habs who play the strong game. But
he's also skilled. The underrated part of Gallagher is that he's also skilled. Yes, he's a garbage man. He picks up rebounds. He scores goals from 4 feet away. But like, he can break into a zone. He's played with Tatar and Deneau to the point where he knows where they are in the ice. Okay, they move well, they weave well, they cycle well. You can't replace that, right? Yeah. And you were talking about Drouin, and if we've talked about it before. If you took a third of Gallagher's heart and you put it into Drouin might be one of the best players in the Northern Division. Like, the kid's got skills. He just disappears. He's inconsistent and he disappears. And some of that effort and drive that I think he was showing early on in the year, which didn't necessarily result in goals, but he was generating chances, he was grabbing assists, it's gone now. And like, he's now moved back into whipping boy territory now that Deneau started to play better. Like in the early part of the year it was Deneau, now it's Drouin. But Drouin's not playing well, and I don't know what the solution is with this guy. Is there hope for him, or is it too late?
You know what? I don't know. Honestly, that's the thing. Is he, like you said, he started the season off hot and then just dropped off. Just stopped. I don't know if it was something to do with maybe the coaching system, but at the same time, when Ducharme came in, Ducharme gave confidence to Drouin to say, "I'm going to give you more minutes." I mean, it's tough to see what's going to happen next. There's going to be some moves obviously made. We have the trade deadline, and literally by 24 hours from today, like right now, it's middle of the afternoon on Sunday. By tomorrow, this team might be a whole different team. We just have to hope for the health, and I don't know how you can fix it. The thing is bringing in people to Montreal, bringing in the offensive power of someone who's in their prime is not the easy task for management.
And you're not going to get healthy right away. You're just not, because it's a compressed schedule. So yeah, Armia might be the closest guy to coming back, because I think they said he's starting to skate and he seems to be over his COVID diagnosis. But Price now is gone from, it's starting to sound like 2015. It's gone from day to day. Now maybe next week. Who knows? Chiarot broke his finger, so he's going to need a few more weeks. Gallagher, broken thumb, a few more weeks. And, the defense is somewhat in shambles. I mean, Weber looks just slow and tired this year. Petry's starting to show some mental fatigue, with some mental mistakes. Edmondson's hot start when he was playing with Petry, that's kind of given way. We speak of defensemen and we speak of trades, and the Habs traded for Jon Merrill today, as we spoke about before. But just before we move on to talk about that, it's funny because the Weber-Subban trade will forever sort of be this turning point for many fans, right, in the franchise. And, in an immediate aftermath, I think Nashville benefited. They went to the finals the next year. Subban had a pretty good year in his second year. And then Subban's kind of fallen off. At the end of the day, that trade now becomes somewhat of a judgment call, in terms of would it really have changed anything for the Habs? The trade that'll forever, for me, sort of cause me pause and sort of regret is Sergachev for Drouin. Because at the time when they did it, I kind of understood why they did it. I didn't like it because, to me, Drouin was a winger. He wasn't a center. They tried to make him a center. It didn't work out. Then they put him at wing. He had some really good moments with Domi, if you remember, in 2018, 2019. But again, inconsistent and faded. And Sergachev's developed into a top-line left defenseman. Guess what the Habs need? A top-line left defenseman. And you can't find these guys. You draft them, and they did. But you can sign a guy like Drouin all day long. They did it. They traded for Anderson and signed him. They signed Toffoli. You can sign wingers. So to me, it'll always go down as Bergevin's worst move, and a move I think that legitimately set the Habs back, because I think, first of all, with Sergachev and Weber, you would have had a really nice top pair, and you would have had Sergachev come in to replace Markov, sort of the heir apparent. Yeah, he might have needed some years, a couple more years to get to where he is now, but I just think it was a massive sort of step back for the franchise. And, maybe there was, at that point when we traded for Drouin, there was kind of still hope that he would become a superstar or just under a superstar level player. He had shown flashes in Tampa. To me, he's done. Like, he is what he is. He's a streaky 50 to 60 point player. You can't really rely on him much. He probably would play well in a contender where he can be sort of isolated and hidden a little bit, because defensively he's just not there, and he might benefit from not playing against top competition. On the Habs, he's just, I think this is his peak.
You know what? I agree. I mean, it would have been nice to see Sergachev actually get an opportunity and a chance. The thing is that when he was brought in, when he was drafted, we had a surplus of D and a surplus of left D. So it was hard to just try and see what do we need to address. We need to get forward depth. So that's when they went out and they got Drouin. At the time, I remember I was like excited and not, because I liked Sergachev because the Russian vibe in me, but I was also happy with Drouin because I knew that he had potential. I remember watching him with the Halifax Mooseheads. I remember watching him at the World Juniors. He was a kid who was flashy and good flashy. The thing is that he never really found his stride with Montreal. You can look up his stats, and I remember at the beginning of the year, I don't know if you remember, but at the first game of this year, Drouin had 3 assists in the first game of the year against Toronto. And I was like, praise Jesus. Well, not really, because, but I was very happy because I was like, finally he's going to get an opportunity. Finally he's going to do something good with our team this year. Last year he was scrutinized all year long, and now he's going to come into his own, and maybe he'll finally provide the offense that we needed. His last season with Tampa was his best offensive output of his career, when he got 21 goals and 53 points.
Yep.
With Montreal, yeah, he also got 53 points. He never matched the 21 goals. In the last 2 seasons alone, and I'm like the number guy, this, I go for the numbers and I really eat into them. But in the last 2 seasons, he has not been healthy at all. So he's played a combined of 65 games and scored 9 goals out of them. Is it his health? Is it something that's eating at him? I don't know.
No, dude, it's just the player he is. There's no physical health issue with him. He's a hyper talented player. When he's on the ice, he does create chances, and there are games where you're like, wow, this guy is an elite offensive player, because he'll make a move, or he'll make a play or a pass or a deke, or he'll find the open ice, and you're like, wow. But he's a passenger. So I think and I've always believed this about Drouin, his issue appears to be between the ears. He just either doesn't think the game in a way where, for all accounts, he has a high hockey IQ, but he just doesn't seem to think at a fast enough pace, or which I believe is what most people think about him, is that he just doesn't care, which I find it's such a hard thing for me to believe. I know it exists in all walks of life. There are people who are just more nonchalant, and there's people who care more about certain things. I just don't think as a package he's good enough to be anything more than a third line kind of offensive center in this league. I just think that's unfortunately his ceiling. He was a third overall pick, but it happens a lot. And I mean, it's a sad thing to say, but he's a supporting player at best.
Yeah. And
it's disappointing because, I know you like to get into the numbers of the goals and assists, and it's good. I look at the analytics, and analytically, he's been terrible for the Habs.
He almost scored last night. On the bright side, he almost scored last night.
Yeah, I mean, but he's just a negative defensive player.
Yeah.
His offense is limited for what he gets paid, how much he plays. And I mean, this year was better. It's better this year, especially at the beginning of the year. I thought him, Suzuki, and Anderson, they had chemistry together, those three. And they were really kind of lighting it up. And I know they were playing against Vancouver, who the Habs just owned this year a lot. But, until I thought Anderson sort of got hurt there for a little while, kind of broke them up. And I don't know if he just sulked after that or if he just got in his head because he was missing, he has scored a lot of goals this year, right? So
2 goals. 2.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird thing, but he's juggled the lineups recently, Ducharme. But for me, the defensive pairings have been confusing and confounding all year. And now Mete was put on waivers. They brought in Jon Merrill today. And I mean, what is the defense? Let's just say Chiarot's not coming back this year. What is Ducharme doing with the D? What is the plan?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had talked to you about it earlier. When the Habs acquired Jon Merrill, which they did this afternoon for a 5th rounder and Hayden Verbeek of the Laval Rocket, you looked at his numbers, you look at his career so far, and it's nothing special. He's played between Jersey, Vegas, and then recently this year with Detroit. He's not the solution. I mean, I don't think he's gonna. But I'm starting to wonder because of his acquisition. It's a similar salary to Mete, similar style as Mete. He's just a bit bigger, maybe a bit slower. Is this maybe like what I thought? Is this maybe a piece to make a bigger move? What do you think?
It could be. Here's my take on Merrill because I dug into his analytics, and you're right. Like statistically, goals, assists, plus minus, nothing to write home about. But from an analytical point of view, in terms of offense and defense, he is a pure defensive defenseman. In fact, he's one of the best defensive defensemen on the left side at 5-on-5 this year. And that's playing for Detroit, who is not a very good team. So those are good things. He's a better defensive defenseman than Edmondson and Chiarot, who I think are 2 overrated defensemen because they're physical, but really other than physicality, they haven't really brought anything to the table this year. Now, Chiarot was pretty good last year. He took a step back this year, right? Edmondson, I think, is what he is. I think Petrie carried him earlier in the year. I always thought Edmondson was a redundant player for the Habs. They have Weber, they have Chiarot, and they didn't need an Edmondson. Now, Merrill seems like a cheaper, better option than Chiarot or Edmondson. So if this is a precursor to a move where he moves out Chiarot or Edmondson, combined with a pick, a prospect, I don't know, to get in a more impact player, I'm all for it. I'm here for it. I'm filled with dread because I never know what Bergevin is going to do, but I'm here for it. If this is it, I mean, I guess it's good because Merrill's probably a better option than Leskinen. It's probably a safer option than Mete, although, me, I'm a huge Mete fan, and I think the Habs have kind of mishandled him. He's a safe play. He's a guy who's going to help. What I read about him, he seems like he's a good defenseman. He's a good potential second pair, third pair defenseman. So, maybe they just pair him with Romanoff and have a Merrill-Romanoff pairing. And that might be a very good, solid third pair right there. But they still got to figure out their top 4, man.
Yeah.
Today in practice, I sent you a list that John Lou tweeted. It looks like they put Edmondson back with Petrie. and they moved Kulak with Weber. So will that help? We both said that Weber might benefit from playing with a, quick skating, puck moving defenseman. Could be Kulak.
It could be. Absolutely. Could be Merrill. You never know. Really, at this point in the game, it's do or die. Right now they are luckily they had a good hot start to the year, which has solidified their almost certain playoff spot. Because if it wasn't for that, then right now they'd be tooth and nails fighting every game for that playoff spot.
But I'll tell you what, Davey, I'm just looking at the standings. They have 3 games in hand on the Flames.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
They are up 5 points. So if they lose, if this 3-game losing streak turns to 4 and 5 and 6, and the Flames pop up some W's, we're in for a fight here, man. Like, this is not a shoo-in anymore. The Habs are still in the driver's seat. You own 3 games in hand and a 5-point lead. You should make the playoffs. But with the injuries and sort of the concern that we are discussing for the Habs, they got to start putting up some W's, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be one of those seasons where when you look back at the season and you say, well, that 3-game losing streak didn't help. That game losing streak didn't help. We could have won that game. I mean, think about all the games that they lost in extra time. The overtime and shootout losses. They've lost, 10, 9, 10? I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Those are points that were valuable points that would have been helpful. Well, will be helpful down the line. But I don't know. There's
9 overtime losses for the Habs.
There you go. 9 overtime and shootout losses.
OTL. So you flip even 3 more of those, just 3 of those games to wins, and that's 3 more points. And then that cushion with the Calgary is almost insurmountable to me. Unless the Habs lose every single game between now and the end of April.
And those 3 games that they lost this week, they weren't even overtime or shootout losses. They were all regulation.
Big hurt. And basically the Jets have cleared the Habs. The Habs and the Jets seem to have solidified the fact that they're going to be the second best team in the conference. No one's touching Toronto anymore. Even Edmonton has kind of put a nice cushion between them and the Habs. The Habs will basically need to win, 60-70% of the game and expect the Oilers or Jets to play at 500 or less just to catch them, right? Because they're 10 points behind the Jets. They have 3 games in hand, and they're 9 points behind the Oilers. They have 4 games in hand. So again, comes back to this point. The Habs cannot, this 3-game losing streak, it needs to end. The Habs need to beat Toronto tomorrow. And that's a huge ask, because Toronto right now is rolling. They're rolling hot. They're playing well. Campbell is the hottest goalie in the league. He's certainly playing over his head here. You don't maintain a 940. And yesterday, by the way, he got shelled. I mean, Ottawa scored 4 goals on him, and they still won. 5 goals on him, and they still won. So, Toronto is good. I know Habs fans, it hurts to say it. It hurts me, right? But the Habs fans who deny it are even worse to me. Toronto is good this year, and we have to admit it. As I've heard Habs fans be like, "Oh, I want to play Toronto in the first round." I don't either. No, are you crazy? They're playing everyone. I just I don't want to play the Jets. I think the Habs pose the best chance against the Oilers. But for the Habs and Oilers to play each other in the first round, the Jets are going to have to drop considerably, and the Oilers and Habs have to pass them. It looks to me like it's going to be the Jets or the Leafs for the Habs, and that's assuming the Habs can even close on the Oilers. So
either they're
it's going to be interesting,
or they're shit out of luck, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sitting here telling you they have 0 chance against the Leafs. The Habs are not a horrible team. In fact, they're a good team when they're healthy and they're playing their game. I just think, the Leafs seem to have put it together. Their defense with Brody and Hall this year has really gone solid. I mean, you watched the game on Wednesday against Toronto. That's a good defense. Even when the Habs had chances and were putting pucks on net, everything was coming in from the outside. It's just the Leafs D is the thing that impresses me the most. We all know their forwards are good. There's no new news there. But their D is really good now. And I think, with Campbell solidifying their goaltending, even if he slides down and it just kind of sits at a 920, which is a great save percentage.
I'd still be afraid of a 920. Come on
Of
now, let's be
course.
real.
But I mean, he's been at 940. There's going to be a regression here, probably an ugly one like last night where he let in 5 goals. And they'll lose some games here. But I just if they get any sort of stable goaltending, they're making it out of this division easily. My opinion.
Oh no, that's totally true. I mean, it's funny because whenever people think of Toronto, they think of the top players in terms of Marner and Matthews, Tavares, who's on a bit of a downward slide, but still providing offense. You have like players secondary scoring from Jason Spezza, from Joe Thornton. You have players who are just stepping up. But then you think of their defense, and you don't think of it as a really shutdown defense, but they have been. And Jack Campbell, like you said, has been standing on his head. This guy set an NHL record last night. And beat Karen Price's record.
Yeah, I know. He's been good, but honestly, it started when they got Jake Muzzin. And I give full credit to Kyle Dubas, who, is an analytic-based manager, but it seems that he understood he also needed some intangibles like experience. So he brings in Jake Muzzin, who has a Stanley Cup pedigree. He brings in Brody, who's a defensive defenseman, but can play the Leafs style. They developed Justin Hall, right? Morgan Riley's an offensive defenseman. They got some good depth pieces. They brought in Thornton, right? And Spezza, again, depth experienced pieces, but who can play the game. And I think there was a learning experience from the management point of view there too. And I just don't think this is the same team that has choked in the first round. And, it's funny because the reputation is that they choke in the first round. They did last year. They choked hard. They got goalied hard by Columbus.
By Korpisalo, not just Columbus, by Korpisalo.
Yeah, but previously, I mean, who did they lose to? They lost to the Boston Bruins, who were arguably the best team in the league those few years. They went to the finals one year, and I just don't think Toronto. From Montreal, it's easy to sit here and be like, "Oh, the last they suck," blah blah blah. Listen, there are aspects of Toronto that I can't stand in terms of their media and some of their fan base, just like they can't stand some of the Montreal media and fan base. It's just a normal thing for fan bases to do. And there's, but they're a good team, and it's going to be a tough team to overcome if you want to get out of the North. And that's sort of my take on it. And I don't know what the Habs can do here. I mean, the trade deadline is tomorrow, correct?
Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Yep. 3 p.m. Eastern.
What can they do? I think the Habs need to figure out a way to maintain at least a 500-plus record between now and the end of May. Armia's coming back. Gallagher's going to come back. You got Caulfield as a potential call-up. Chiarot, now Merrill's coming in. Price is going to come back. Hopefully he'll be well rested and can put together a good stretch of games. It's not a team I want to play in the playoffs either. A healthy Habs is a tough team to beat. Maybe that's what Bergevin does. Maybe he stands pat.
You think so? I mean, you got to wonder also, we'll talk about briefly, Caulfield. I'm going to say this with a fun stat. He has gotten 100% winning goals in 100% of his games with Laval. I mean,
I know.
What a stat. 2 for 2. Anyways, there's a lot we can talk about. We can talk about the other teams, but you know what? What we care about is the Habs. No offense, guys.
No, for sure. Listen, we spent some time talking about Toronto again and the Jets, who Hellebuck to me is still the best goalie in the division and maybe the league. And yeah, I'm curious to see what Bergevin does on the trade deadline.
It's going to be fun
to talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting trade deadline. I can assure you that. I mean, you did say Connor Hellebuck. I mean, it was an interesting fact. This was a stat that I found out at the end of the game last night. It was the first time that the Jets, in their modern era or in their old era, back in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, it was the first time that they had ever shut out the Habs. Ever. So I know.
Really?
Really. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And that was also the first time that Hellebuck has ever shut out the Habs, too, in his 6-year career. But you know what? There's always first for everything. Hopefully the first of many good things are to come with the Habs. I don't know. We can talk more about the trades. We can talk about more about that, what goes down, which we probably will later on this week, because right now we're going to talk about, we talked about just the Habs. So on that note, guys, what do you think about our opinions? I mean, we didn't say any names that we think are going to come or go from Montreal, but you know what? that's for us to dissect after the trade deadline, which we will. So, yeah, I mean, on behalf of myself and on the behalf of Z, thank you guys for tuning into our show. We really do appreciate all the love, the support, the fun we have is because of you guys. So, you know what? On that note, thanks for tuning in to another wonderful episode of Shooting the Shit.